Hello again, gamers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm the Captain, and today I'm going to be reviewing and showing you how to play Fate of Phantos. Fate of Phantos is a game that was published by Mondo Games and TMP House Game Company, and it was designed by Darth Rimmer and Travis Watkins. So I'm going to show their names there as well as the game company logos there. So I want to give a big thank you to Mondo Games who gave me this copy of Fate of Phantos to check out and play and review. Thank you, Mondo Games. And I also want to say before we get too far with this, I do want to say that I have a ton of links in the description down below that you can check out at your leisure. There is a link to my Teespring store. We've got tons of cool gamer gear like this, Board Game Captain merch. This shirt says, I drink and I game, it's what I do, and it has a mug of beer and a D20 on it. I've got other shirts and mugs, etc. that you can buy over there. Also, if you're in a position to and would like to support my channel, I have a link to my Patreon, also in the description down below. And there's a link to BoardGameCaptain.com, which is a great hub for all things Board Game Captain. And Lynn and I have started doing some semi-regular blog posts over there. All right, so Fate of Phantos. So the first thing we have here is this is a 3 to 6 player game. I've tried it at a few different player counts, and it plays pretty well at the different player counts, and actually lasts roughly around the same amount of time because of the way that the timing deck works in this in regard to limiting the number of turns, though it does go a little longer with more players. It's ages 14 and up. I do agree with this because actually there's a lot of rules in this game. And the time is listed at 60 to 120 minutes. Once you get some experience with this, your first couple of games might even go over that 2-hour mark. This is kind of a heavier game. There's a bit more going on here. Okay, so let's open this up and show you what comes in the box. So first off, I do want to say I absolutely adore the artwork in this, and the cover art is super gorgeous. Absolutely love it. So we open up the box here, and the first thing we have is the rule book. Now the rule book is very well done. It's rather long though, so you do want to take some time to properly read through it before you go to teach other people how to play this game, because there's a lot in here. But there are also lots of examples and diagrams which are very helpful for helping you to understand how to play the game, because there's a lot of concepts in here. There's a lot going on. But overall, I thought the rulebook was quite good. It's just one of those games where even after reading the entirety of this 22-page rulebook, it's still going to take you a little while to teach people how to play the game. But that's not really the rulebook's fault. It's just the nature of the beast in regard to this, because it is kind of a heavier game. Now, the next thing we have here is the board. Now, the board is okay. It's not a whole lot to rave about. It's mostly a placeholder for cards and markets and things like that. It has symbols on it that show you where all those various things go, which is very helpful. But overall, it's fairly bland. It's kind of black with a bit of a gray artwork in the background. But it's really, when it comes to boards, this one's not anything to write home about. Now, the player boards, on the other hand, we get back to that gorgeous artwork. The player boards are beautiful. There's a ton of them. They have really, really nice and different artwork on each one. I'm just going to show them all to you here and now. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the artwork in this game, and the player boards are really nice. Next, we have a ton of decks of cards. You're going to see a lot of these out, but suffice to say, similarly, the artwork and the iconography is great on these. The cards are colorful, and this game feels very retro. So these things really feel like we're looking at characters from the 80s and even in some cases the 70s. A lot of the artwork in here feels like a throwback to late 70s, early 80s comic books, which I find really cool. You're going to see a lot more of the cards out on the table. And then we have the common gem types that you see in a lot of games now of red and pink. These are quite functional and nice. And we have some cardboard standees and cardboard punch-out tokens. Not a whole lot to talk about there. I'm not a big fan of this insert. I know it's not a component, but I did want to reference it. This cardboard insert's a little meh. It would have been nicer to have a proper plastic insert for this. But that said, I love the artwork. The board and the insert are maybe not as much. But yeah, overall, I would say the production is pretty darn good in this. So now let's head over to the table. We're going to run you through a full round to show you all of the possible actions you can take and how to basically play this game, give you a good feel for how the game plays. And then we're going to come back. I'm going to talk about how this game plays and feels, and I'm going to rate it and review it. Okay, so here we are set up to play a 3-player game of Fate of Phantos. We've chosen to play 3 of the different factions here. I will be controlling the yellow and purple faction, the yellow faction being Lumeria, the Enlightened, and the purple faction over here being Roylos, the Overseers. And Lynn?
And I'm going to be the blue over here, the Jinar, the Feral.
Okay, and we're all set up over here, and we're set up and ready to do the final portion of the setup, which I did want to show. So let me explain exactly how you set up this game. So the first thing you do when setting up the game is that you create the Acolyte pool and deck. Now the Acolyte deck is over here, and it's simply done that you shuffle this up and you deal up 5 Acolytes into the market over here. The next thing you do is you shuffle up and deal out player hands and create the favor deck. Now this is the favor deck right here. Again, you shuffle this up and you deal out 5 cards to start for each player. This is your hand of cards that you're going to be able to play through Acolytes that you're going to get at the start of the game. Next, you create the Trials deck. Now, the Trials deck is a little more complicated because you separate them out into level 1 through level 4 cards. You shuffle up each level individually, put the level 4 cards on the bottom, then the 3s, then the 2s, and the 1s on top, so that as you go through the trials, they get more difficult until you get all the way down to the level 4 cards, which include the Zadros card, which will trigger the end of the game. So this deck is a bit of a timer working your way towards the end of the game. Then the next thing you do is you got to put the tribute marker here on the board for when someone calls a tribute action. You create the Fate deck by picking the colors of Fate cards of each of the factions being used. So in this case, we have the purple, the yellow, and the blue, and you just shuffle that on up. Then you create the reserves and the troves for each of the factions of Iridium. Now, reds are worth 5, pinks are worth 1. Everybody starts with 15 pinks and 5 reds, and the rest are put on the board for harvesting. And then we assign the citadels. And again, we've already told you which citadels we are going to be playing. Now, the next part of the game is that we are going to do the Acolyte hiring. So for the Acolyte hiring, we're going to randomly pick which player goes first by drawing one of these Fate cards here. And it is yellow. So yellow is going to recruit first. Now, they get to recruit one of these minions from the board. They have to pay an amount of iridium equal to what's in the top right-hand corner here. However, if they pick a minion of their own faction, which it means the same color, or for those who are colorblind, there is a symbol, which helps it to be colorblind friendly here. As you see, this card here has the same symbol that is shown on their faction board. If they pick the minion with the same symbol, they will get a 1 cost discount that they get to take from the bank. Now, in the case of this player, they are definitely going to pick this character because it is a very valuable character. He has some very high stats for both warfare and tribute, though not very good on the harvest. But now he costs 6 to hire. So now, again, because it's the same color faction, the first comes from the bank, and the other 5 is going to come from them, and you put that on them because that is both their life total and their currency for playing cards as you go forward. Then you replace the card, and the next player will get to hire a card. So now it's my turn. I also would like to take the character out here that is of my own faction because I would like to get a discount. They are a much cheaper character, though, because their stats are nowhere near as high. They are Merchant. Now, Merchant is only a 3-cost character. I'm going to take him to my area. I get the first 1 from the bank and 2 from me because they were my own faction. And I'm going to flip up, and then it is Lynn's turn.
I'm going to take this blue one, Gravedigger.
So as you see, we've all been going for our own faction colors because that discount is huge. It really, really does help. But now that it is yellow player's turn here, there are no cards left that are of their faction. So they're going to have to pay for somebody that is completely not their faction. Now, looking at the stats they have for the Marquis there, they're really going to want to take a character that has a good harvest stat because they don't have a good harvest stat with the Marquis. So they have decided, since they already spent a large amount on the Marquis, and there are multiple characters out here with 2s in their harvest stat, which is the highest stat of the 3 stats on the side of the card here, they want to get the cheapest one because they want to get an affordable harvest stat on their side. So they're going to get Quarryman here, who only costs 3. So it's not too expensive. So they're going to put 3 Iridium on Quarryman, and then they're going to replace it. And now it is my turn. There is another purple character out there. They're an expensive one, but I will get a discount on them. So I cannot resist that. I'm going to go right for Erzog over there. So Erzog costs 6, but I get the first from the bank because he is my faction's color. And then it is back to Lynn's turn. And again, there is no one of Lynn's faction currently up, so she is going to have to pay full price for somebody.
So I'm going to purchase Draymond because he has stats in things that I don't have any stats in.
Good choice. He's got, what, a 3 in Warfare, which is the best for him. So that's, and you had nothing in Warfare so far. So that's really good. Okay, so now it is back to the yellow player's turn, and there is a yellow card up there, but it's an expensive one. But there are no really decent, cheap ones up there, so they are going to go for them. So they cost 5, so they're going to, but of course, with the Alchemist being their faction's color, they get the first of those 5 from the bank, and then they're going to spend 4 from their reserve to the Alchemist and then replace them. And now it is my turn, and I do not have any cards up and available that will be for my faction. But I do notice, looking at the cards I've already taken, I don't have very good Warfare. I only have 1 Warfare with each of my characters. I also only have mediocre Harvest because Erzog has a Harvest of 2, and I've got nobody else with a Harvest of 3. So I'm looking for somebody with at least a pretty good Warfare and a good Harvest. And looking around on the board there, I could get Villain with a Harvest of 3, but he's got terrible Warfare. Or I could get Bowman, who has both a 2 of Harvest and Warfare, which actually, I think I'm going to go Jack of all trades and go for Bowman. Let me see what his ability says. He's got a really cool ability, too, that helps him with Warfare, so yeah, I'm going to go with him. He costs 5, so I am going to immediately put 5 of my pink crystals on Bowman to hire him, and then it is Lynn's turn to finish up our 3 hiring phases because we start with 3 of the acolytes each.
I'm going to get Famulus just because I like his ability more than any of the other ones available.
Plus, he has a really both a fairly decent war stat and a really good harvest stat, which you didn't have a very good harvest stat, right?
No.
So that's pretty good. Okay, so now we are ready to start the actual game. So the first thing we have to do is figure out who's going to be the first player, and that is based on who has the most Iridium left. So we're going to do a quick count up on who has the most Iridium. He is 29.
I have 31.
Well, Lynn, you have the most Iridium, so why don't you take the first player token? You are going to be going first. I don't know how you wound up savings. Oh, because you bought some really cheap guys. Was that guy only cost 2?
Yeah, and I only paid 1 for him.
Oh, wow. That's what did it. That's what did it. Oh, well played. Okay, so it is Lynn's turn. So now on our turns, what you do is you take the token here and you place it on the each phase of the turn in order so you don't miss anything, which is a real nice cheat sheet for all the phases of the turn. Now, the first phase of the turn is to untask and draw up. You task your acolytes as you use them, but as nothing has been tasked, and draw up means you draw up to your full 5-card hand, which we started with, and since no cards have been played yet, Lynn basically skips that phase of the turn and moves right on to the next phase, which says Phantos Action, during which you can pick one of 3 choices. Lynn, which choice are you going to choose?
I'm going to do a war action with Draymond.
Okay. So that means now when you do a war action, you're going to be attacking the player to your left. So only Draymond is coming in to attack?
Yes.
So the yellow player is going to react to that by playing the Page Hood. Now the Page Hood costs 1. They're going to play it from the marquee here. So they're going to spend 1. And what this does is it has the little blast symbol, so it says it can be played at any time. And what it does is it gives +1 to that to whoever you attach it to's war stat. So that ups the marquee's war stat to a 4. He was already incredibly good, but now he's just phenomenal with his war stat of 4. But now that I played that, I have to see if Lynn is going to react to it by playing any cards of her own. Lynn, are you going to react to that? It is important to note that whenever you play these cards, again, they are played by the Acolyte, and that Acolyte must not be tasked to be able to play the card, though they can play a card for another Acolyte that is tasked, but they spend their own Iridium for the cost of the card, which again, this card had a cost of 1, and that's why I took that 1 off the marquee so he could play it on himself, and now he has a war stat of 4.
I'm not going to do anything.
Okay, so in which case, at that point, I'm going to task the Marquis to defend now that he has a war stat of 4. So now we each are going to draw a card, starting with Lynn, to see what boost we get, because this game does not use any dice, it uses the fake cards. Lynn drew a 3 blue. Oh, I should have probably tasked more people to defend here. Being that it's blue, and Lynn is the blue faction, that gives it a +1, so Lynn gets 4 on top of her war stat, which brings her all the way up to a 7. And now I draw only a 1 blue, which means even that boost, I'm only at a 5. Ow. So Lynn beats me by 2, which means she gets to steal 2 of the Iridium off the Marquis. He had a 5 in him. I'm just going to make change real quick. So he's going to be sitting on only 3 Iridium, and she gets to take 2 to her reserve there. Okay, are you done with your war action?
I'm going to play Siege Works on Famulus.
Okay.
It costs 2.
Uh-huh.
And it says choose anyone Alkalite to gain 3+3 war for 1 action.
Hold on, I'm going to counter that. I'm going to play Shell Game off of Alchemist. It says, can be played at any time, cancel another card, but I have to pay the cost equal to that card. So your cost was what, 2?
2.
So I'm going to pay 2 off Alchemist to cancel that card, because that card is just too darn brutal. And I did not want you getting that huge boost.
And then I'm going to use Famulus. It says you may task Famulus to initiate a harvest or war action. This is in addition to your Phantos action for your turn. So I'm going to
start a second war action?
A war action with him.
All right. Well, I'm gonna commit Quarryman and Alchemist to defending, because I don't have a whole lot of war stat left. They each have 1, but they each get to draw a card. Are you playing any other cards? As you looking at your hand over there?
No.
Okay, so in which case, Lynn's going to draw a fake card for her character there, which is a +1. It is not her color, which means your war stat goes up to a 3, correct? Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to draw 1 for Quarryman, who gets a +3, and 1 for Alchemist, who gets a +2. So I'm gonna actually be doing pretty good here. So I've got a total of 5, 6, 7, and what did you have?
3.
3. So I actually won this war pretty handily, actually. With my 7-3, I won by 4, which means that actually Famulus is going to be knocked out because he has only 2 Iridium, which I'm going to get to take to my reserve, and there's 2 more that I'm going to steal from your Citadel. So while your first war worked out really well for you, the second one did not. So now Famulus gets discarded to the discard area for the Acolytes. So now that you're, I believe, unless you have any other cards to play, I believe your action phase is done. Mm-hmm. So now we're going to go to the trials phase. So the trials only happen either if you are the first player, you automatically have to do at least 1 trial, which Lynn is, or if you did a harvest action, which Lynn did not do. So now, since she did not do a harvest action to decide how many trials we do, she just does the minimum of 1 since she is the first player. So Lynn, draw a trial and tell us what we got going on.
Commence a vote. If approved, each Citadel may draw up to 7 cards instead of 5 during its draw phase.
Oh, during that's pretty awesome.
For each card past 5 it draws, it must spend 1
Iridium
from its reserve.
Oh, but it would cost us Iridium to do it. So it's an option. You may, but you don't have to. I think that's pretty cool, though, for the option. So now we discuss motivation back and forth. We might try to convince other people that it's good or bad. I think this is really good because you don't have to. It's not going to force anyone to use any Iridium. But if you want to spend Iridium, you can draw extra cards. What are your thoughts?
I vote against it.
You're not liking it?
Yeah.
Okay, so now what happens is each of us are going to vote. Of course, I am voting for 2 people here. So I'm going to put 2 hands out. 1, 2, 3. Let's vote. I got 2 thumbs up and 1 thumb down, so it goes into law. So people can spend Iridium now to draw extra cards. Now, when these phases come up, we keep filling the slots until there are 3. Once there are 3 there, when extra ones come up, we have to remove some of the older cards. If we remove older cards, the person whose turn it is will decide which card gets removed, unless someone has the tribute. If they are the tribute, then they get to decide which card gets removed to make room, though you can never remove a card that you just drew this round. Okay, so are you done with your trials phase.
Yes.
So it's time for your secondary action phase. Did you have any secondary actions you would like to play? I noticed you do have a secondary action on that one acolyte there that is not exhausted.
I'm going to do Gravedigger secondary action.
Oh, what does his secondary action do?
It says turn all acolytes in the hiring pool face down and shuffle them. When one is hired, add one face up.
What? That's ridiculous. So you have to hire them blind. Of course, you will also have to hire blind for your round, but this will also mess up everybody else as well. Wow, what a weird play. Now, I do know, because we have looked up him in the past, that if once people are hired, the new guys come up face up. So the next phase is going to be the hiring phase. Lynn, are you going to hire a acolyte? Of course, hiring them will be blind.
I'm going to do this one.
Okay, let's see what it is.
Astrologers.
Oh, well, he gives you a really a large amount of tribute. And then we're going to flip one face up, which is a good warfare blue character, actually, for Lynn, but not very good at anything else. So then we're going to move up to the discard phase, which Lynn, you can discard any number of cards from her hand that she would like, but of course you don't get to draw back up until the beginning of your next turn. So be sure that when discarding, you're not discarding cards that you would want to use, in her case, from the astrologers, because they're the only character that is not currently tasked, so that they're the only character that could play a card. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the yellow player's turn. So the first part of the yellow player's turn is that they are going to untask all of their acolytes, and they are also going to get to draw up to their 5-card hand. And they did actually play a couple of cards there to help counteract those big attacks coming at them from Lynn. So they're going to get to draw a couple of cards. And now it is their turn to move on and pick a Phantos action. So they decide they're going to call a tribute, and they're going to task the Marquis to do a tribute. So the way that works is the Marquis is going to be tasked to the tribute, and then everyone else may task one character if they want to the tribute. So I am going to task Herzog to the tribute. Lynn, are you going to task anyone?
Okay, I'll task the astrologers for the tribute. Excellent.
Okay, so really quickly, they're going to spend 2 from the Quarryman to play Council to give any acolyte +3 tribute for 1 tribute action. But now they have to give Lynn and me, as the purple player, a chance to see if we want to play anything to try to counter that. I'm not going to counter it. Lynn said she's not going to counter it, but I am also going to play the same card from the Bowman to give +3 to Herzog. Again, we have to check to see if anybody wants to counter that action, and at which point the yellow player is going to play 2 off of the Alchemist to play the shell game and counter it so that I will not be able to match them in that. So now we're going into this tribute where the yellow player has a total of 6 points going into the tribute before we even draw cards. They're going to draw their first the first card here, which gives them another 2, which brings them up to 8. Herzog has a total of 3, and he draws 1, but it's purple, so it gives me 2. So that brings me up to 5. And then Lynn, how much tribute did that character have?
3, and then another 3, 6.
Nice. So Lynn is second place to the 8 of the yellow player, which means that the yellow player, first off, gets the tribute token and gets to put it on the Marquis. And then that will give them access to all of the actions, all of the special abilities that you get for being the tribute. The first of the abilities is that anytime you call a war action, like Lynn did on her turn, you will then get to be able to attack anyone. You don't just have to attack the player to your left. The next of the abilities is that you have a tiebreaker. If there's ever a tie in a vote, you automatically count as the tiebreaker. So whatever you chose to do will be what happens. And the third ability is that when a card gets discarded, you will always choose which card of the cards up here gets removed to replace it with a new one of the trial cards. So that is really cool. But in addition, they get to steal a number of iridium equal to the difference between their number that went into their ability and the runner-up. In this case, that is 2, and they've decided they're going to steal 1 from each of me and Lynn, so we're each going to have to give them 1 iridium. And then they're going to be done with their action phase. Now they're going to move on to the trials. Now they are not the first player and they did not choose to harvest, so no trials are going to get drawn. They're going to move on to the secondary action. They've decided they do not want to do any secondary actions. They're going to hold on to their cards for a little bit here. And they want to keep their couple of acolytes for defending if they get attacked again, because Lynn sounds like she's being very warring. Then they're going to go on to the hiring phase, and they do want to hire someone, but they don't want that blue character there. So they're going to choose to do one of the random ones, thanks to Lynn's ability. They're going to pick this guy here. Let's see. It is not their faction, but it does have a really good tribute stat. He costs 3 to hire, so they're going to put the 3 on him and add him to their group of acolytes over here. Then they're going to move on to the discard phase. They're going to choose not to discard anything, and that is it for their turn. And then it is the purple player's turn over here. The purple player's turn, they will untask and draw up. Now they have currently 4 cards in their hand because they did try to boost Erzog's stat to help win the tribute, which failed, unfortunately, but they are going to get to draw another card. So then after drawing that extra card, they are going to choose their Phantos action. For their Phantos action, they decide they want to harvest. So for their harvest, they're going to exhaust all 3 of their acolytes into the harvest because they want to get a bunch of iridium if they can. So they are choosing to do, that is 2, 4, 5 points of harvest, and then they are going to draw a card for each of the acolytes that are choosing to harvest. So they get a +2 because it's the same. It's a 1 but with my color, so that's a +2 to his harvest, and then a +1 to the next character's harvest, not so good, and a +2 to the other harvest. So that is a total of another 5 harvest added on, which brings them up to a total of 10 harvest, which is huge. So I'm going to take 2 of the reds from the pool here for my total of 10 harvest. I'm going to discard those cards that I used. At which point, I'm going to move on to the trials. Now, for the trials, because I did 10, we're going to have to draw 2 trials. If you harvest and you get up to 6, you draw 1 trial. Then up to 12 is 2 trials, and above 12 is 3 trials. So the first of the 2 new trials is going to be Dark Unions. Commence a vote. If approved, instead of hiring from the hiring pool, a citadel may reveal the top card of the Acolyte deck to hire. If it cannot afford or chooses not to hire, that Acolyte is discarded. So this is another one that doesn't really have any negative side. So I'm going to argue during this part of the turn where we're arguing for or against. I'm going to argue that this is going to be really cool because I do think that this would be a fun thing to be able to choose if you don't like any of this stuff out there. I imagine, though, since you were trying to make it harder for other people to hire, that you're probably going to argue against it.
No, I'm okay with it.
You're okay with it?
Yeah.
So we're going to discuss it. Lynn's all for it. We decide the yellow player has decided they're not for it. So we say 1, 2, 3, go. There's 2 thumbs up, 1 thumb down. This goes into law, so people can hire from the top of the deck if they want. Now we have to check another trial. The next trial that comes up is Iridium Dementia. After a citadel completes a harvest action, it must transfer 2 iridium to the reserve of the citadel with the least iridium, or 1 iridium to each with the least in the case of a tie. Who has the least iridium right now? Because they have the most to benefit from that.
I think probably me.
How much iridium do you got there?
26.
Let me see. Well, they've got 20. Yeah, you have the least. So you're definitely going to be voting for that. I think the rest of us are going to be against that, though. So, because obviously right now, but you know what? Actually, yellow's probably for it because they're not that far behind you, and they could probably see themselves winding up in a position where they have less than you. So actually, I'm going to be against it. But if you and yellow are for it, I think it's going to come into effect. So it's going to come into effect as a law. Okay, so that's going to be it for my trials. Now for my secondary actions, I am not going to play any secondary actions. I'm just going to move on. to the hiring. And for the hiring, I'm going to hire this face-up character here because I need someone to help defend me because I exhausted everyone for a big harvest, but I don't want to get attacked. And this character here has a 3 on warfare, which is really good for defense. But they do cost 4 and they're not my color. So I'm going to hire them though because I really want them for a good defense. I'm going to put the 4 Iridium on them and then we're going to replace them and see what comes up. Oh, it's another blue. Lynn's going to have a good turn. She's got a lot of blue characters up there to hire. And then we're going to move on to the discard. Now, during the discard, I am going to get rid of a bunch of cards because there's stuff that I don't need in my hand. I'm going to get rid of 3 cards so that on my next turn I'll be able to draw back up to a larger hand size. So that's it. That is how you play a game of Fate of Phantos. We just went through an entire round of Fate of Phantos. So you keep playing, and again, the fact that on the first player's turn you have to draw one of the trials, and the fact that you always have to draw trials whenever anyone does a harvest means it's going to slowly force you to get through the deck. And what you're doing is you're going to get through the deck until the Zodraz card comes out. When Zodraz card comes out, he causes a few different things to happen. Specifically, he says, for the remainder of the game, no new trials are drawn. Trials that are in play will remain in play, and when a Citadel does a harvest action, they reduce it by half. At the end of the final round, the ward of Phantos is decided. So what happens is you finish out the current round, and in this sample game, Lynn has gone first, which means we finish out the round till my turn. I am the last player. Then we play one more full final round, and at the end of the game, whoever has the most Iridium that they have stockpiled will win the game of Fate of Phantos. So now I'm going to head back over. We're going to talk about how this game plays and feels, and I'm going to rate it and review it. Welcome back. So that was how you play a game of Fate of Phantos. So I want to start by saying this game is very retro. Even a lot of the mechanics really feel like mechanics from games you used to find in the 80s. There are some things that are very rooted in the 90s, which is kind of later than the theme would have you believe. Like, for instance, the fact that the committing of the cards, the turning them sideways, is very much like tapping in Magic the Gathering, which is, of course, a mechanic that didn't really exist before Magic the Gathering, to show if you would use something turning it sideways. But overall, the art and the feel and the theme feels very, like I say, late 70s through the 80s. Even the main big giant floating head coming through space to end the wars on Fantos and decide who's going to be the new keeper of Fantos is an anagram for Zardoz. So he's like Zadroz. Now, Zadroz is an anagram for Zardoz, which is the giant flying head from the movie Zardoz with Sean Connery. If you've never seen it and you'd like to melt your brain, watch it. It's so weird. But it's a bit of a cult classic. And again, it leads back to that whole campy 80s goodness that this game is really trying to evoke the feeling of. And I really like it. I really appreciate it. But now let's talk about some negatives. So first off, there are a lot of rules here. It's a bit heavy. For some people, this might be a bit of a negative because it's a lot to wrap your mind around. Now, I like heavier games, so that's really not a negative for me, but I'm just putting it out there. If you're not a fan of these bigger, heavier, multi-hour affair type board games, that might be an issue for you. Now, in regard to the mechanics of the game, the standard game I have a big gripe with, which is with the standard rules of the game, there can be player elimination. Now, we do not play with player elimination when I'm playing this game because I found in there's an area where they talk about some suggestions for house rules, and it says instead of having the player elimination, have when one of the players loses all of their life, give all the players 10 more Iridium, because Iridium is your life. If you run out of Iridium, you're eliminated. But this method of making sure that as an optional rule, there is no player elimination is great, and I would never play without it. And actually, if that rule was not in here as a suggestion for an optional rule, I would have rated this game a full point lower than I'm going to rate it because I was having a real big issue with the player elimination. That bit really sticks in my craw. But then after playing this game once, I was looking back through the rulebook and I went, oh wait, they have this in here as a suggestion. That's fine. That fixes my biggest problem with this game. But I did want to address it because it's not in the standard rules. The standard rules do have player elimination. In a game that can go on for multiple hours, someone could get eliminated early on, And that's not fun. That's not fun to just then sit around or go do something else while everyone else keeps playing the board game. So I definitely recommend use that optional rule to avoid the player elimination of this game. Now, with that optional rule in here, and that said, this game is very fun. It's very enjoyable. There's a lot of cool mechanics in it. There's a lot of craziness going on. Lots of the characters have all sorts of interesting, crazy abilities. Like you saw that one that Lynn did where suddenly all the acolytes in the market got flipped face down. So if you were going to purchase them, you had to purchase them blindly, and stuff like that. Is really interesting. There's also some with some very useful abilities that can boost stats for combat or for harvesting, etc. There's lots of really great cards that can counteract each other's cards, and lots of really great card play in here. The game is really, really enjoyable. That one issue, notwithstanding, because it would have been a real issue for me if it had not had the optional rule in there. Otherwise, though, this game is really, really enjoyable. Now, just a bit of a note. This has a lot of take that. This is a very aggro game. There's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of attacking your neighbor. This is a sort of game that you have to play with the right sort of people that like these old school sort of games that will have a lot of ticking off the other people at the table and have to be able to take that like an adult and not get upset and not get mad at the other people they're playing with. That does make it a little bit more restrictive, again, to who I would play this with. So yeah, I've gone back and forth. There's some things in this I really like. I love the artwork. I love the look of it. I love the feel of it, the retro feel. I love a lot of the mechanics. But on the other hand, yeah, there's some things that aren't so great, like in the standard rules, they have player elimination. And also the fact that it's a very aggro game and you have to have the really right group of people to play this, especially in this modern day when a lot of people look at games with these older style mechanics and aren't big fans of them. That said, I like it. I'm going to be giving it a positive rating. I've decided to give Fate of Phantos 7 out of 10 stars. I quite like this game. I think it's very enjoyable. And again, though, that is with using the optional rule to remove the player elimination. I think player elimination has no place in any modern games that last longer than half an hour. So with that optional rule in, I absolutely do enjoy this game. I think it's really fun and can recommend it to you with that optional rule. So there you go. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns either about the game The Fate of Phantos or about this video, feel free to put them in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this review and tutorial of a board game and you'd like to see me do more like it, be sure to give it a like, share it on all forms of social media. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Kaptain. That's Kaptain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.